All right, so the last section we're going to talk about moving forward and what does that look like and what can I do, what changes can I make that are going to best help me, right? So a lot of times I tell people to use this as an opportunity. Whatever brought you in here probably wasn't a great situation, something that you'd ever wish for yourself or anybody else in your life, right? But this is an opportunity that you could take advantage of that. And that's why I put this program together, especially this last part here with the ongoing, so that you could challenge yourself to make some changes. And maybe the changes have absolutely nothing to do with whatever brought you here, right? But you can use that opportunity to make some changes to make your life better. Now, the thought here is that if you're overall just happier, if you have more satisfaction in life, you're much less likely to, use and abuse substances in order to get that. So usually the people who I know who have issues with substances, generally they're using that substance to gain something. They're using it for a purpose, whether it's something as simple to help them sleep, whether it's something to, make them feel better, just in general, physically better. So if there's some purpose you're using it, right, you're more likely to become dependent on it, whereas people who don't have issues with substances generally use substances like, it's kind of like this, something I use every once in a while so that I can have a fun time, right? So just something you do for fun every once in a while, whereas when you start using it for a reason, that's when you kind of fall into a trap, and that's really easy to fall into. So what we have here is it's the balance wheel, right? Happiness and balance, and happiness is spelled wrong. Just pointing that out before you can call me out on it. So this is just some of the areas of life I put together. It's not like there's other areas too, but these are just kind of the main ones. So taking a look at, here are just different elements of life that kind of contribute to happiness, right? So what I tell people is look at each one of these categories, and I want you to rate where you're at on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being horrible, 10 being like totally fulfilled on all of these, right? So if you're doing this section right now, I think this could be a good exercise for you to do, and maybe I won't have you write it, but just do it in your head, of how happy are you. So writing intellectual, I put together just like intellectual curiosity. What are you interested in? Is it science? Or like what do you like to read about? Is there something that piques your curiosity? Some people it's not that big of a deal. They don't really care about anything, but I don't know. But what challenges you? What challenges your mind? I think we do well when we have a mental challenge, or if we have a curiosity. So how satisfied are you there? Then looking at spiritual. Now this is, could be a more controversial one, right? It doesn't have to mean religious per se or even anything to do with God, but, spiritual just means like a connection to something higher, right? So that could be nature, mindfulness, meditation, just getting outside of yourself, connecting with something greater, a greater purpose, whatever that may be, right? So that could take on, but, some people, they just don't have any of it, don't care, don't need it, so maybe they're a 10 because that's fine, right? But maybe other people have gotten away from, maybe have gotten away from church, right? You still like to meditate. What is your connection to whatever it is you believe in? Backward here. So professional, this is a big one. I mean, a third of our life, a little bit less is often in the professional realm, right? It's like we need to, do I like to work to live or do I live to work? Either way, it plays a really important part in our life because we have put so much time and energy into it. So how happy am I in my job, in my career development? That could be, just vocational, school, whatever that may be, right? How satisfied are you in this area? Relationships, right? Romantic, friendship. I mean, we are social beings. This could be one of the most important one. Am I happy with my relationships? Is there something that I think needs to change? So assessing that. Physical, our bodies are meant to move, right? It could be physical health, but it could mean, how do I feel physically? Am I in shape? Whatever that may be. Creative, right? That could be anything from drawing, music, cooking. Where is it that, kind of hitting the other side of the brain, right? The intellectual may be the left side, and then this is the right side. which is more that creative element. Where do I get any passion or inspiration, anything like that? So I don't know, I find usually most people have some kind of hobby or interest that's creative in nature that maybe they fall away from. So assessing yourself, where are you at there? Yeah, so those are the major ones. So what I tell people is, okay, rate each one of those, and imagine each one of these circles here, depending on how fulfilled you are, is filled up, right? So if I'm like really fulfilled in relationships, imagine it's blue, it's filled all the way, full of water or whatever. Maybe physical, it's not so much, I'm at a 3, right? And imagine that like weight, right? If that's the case, this whole thing becomes unbalanced if I'm really low, or if I'm like really all over the board. Most people I find, especially when there's addiction and stuff, they're all over. There's like a 2 or an 8 or or it's just really low across the board, right? So I think that's a good just assessment of where you're at right now. And as we go to create some goals for you in the program and doing your individual sessions, that's a pretty good barometer to go by. So I tell people, right, as we go through the program, depending on what your counselor wants, usually I have people do, 3 to 4 goals that they'll do every single week. Usually SMART goals, or are they specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. If they meet that criteria, something that you can measure every single week and, check off your list, what would that look like for you? So what I want you to do then, if you're moving forward, is to just think about that. And usually, if you're ranking really low in one of these areas, maybe you want to pick one. Maybe you have more than one in a single area. But it's good to kind of diversify that as well. So as we go through the program, I divide it into 3 parts, right? There's education, and that's what you're doing right now, right? If you complete this, you're going to be completing half the education, and the other, right, depending on what your counselor, depending on what level you're on, you're either going to pick 1 or 2 different education tasks or modules or whatever that you're going to do. So you could pick something that we learned about, whether it's the power of habits, whether it's the reward system, whether it's alcohol and its effect on the body, whatever that may be, is you're going to go ahead and do a little bit more research, harm reduction. Go do some more research and write down how it pertains to you and how you can use that, how it pertains to your situation, and what you learned from it, right? And you could talk to your counselor a little bit more about that too. Challenges. So this is kind of like the goals section too, but a challenge could be, something like it's just it's like a big goal, right? But it could be over time. So it's like this says, I'm going to journal every day for a week, or I'm going to go do a yoga class every day for a week. So something that's a little bit, wider, broader, or like I'm going to not eat sugar for, this many days, whatever. That's just an example of a challenge that you can do. So it's like kind of one bigger thing. And the goals are like these daily measurable kind of things, or maybe it's weekly, right? So maybe I read before bed for 15 minutes. That could be the intellectual, if I read a nonfiction, creative, the fiction. A challenge itself too could be like, I'm not going to drink or use for the entirety of the program, and that'll be something that you talk about with your counselor. Everyone's going to have a different recommendation. Some people may be just doing harm reduction, but for most people, it'll say at least while you're doing the program, let's not use and get some new, better habits. And then if you're going to drink or use later, we'll talk about that. Some people just may be better not to ever. Exercise 3 times a week, play basketball with friends, right? So these are all goals that could be based on some of those different life areas. Meditate. For some people, it's like, hey, I wanted to get back into school and I've been putting it off. All right, so then I have them, do 30 minutes of research a week on different schools or applying and to different jobs, whatever that may be. So that's what I was saying before, is that people can use this as an opportunity to have some accountability, to make some changes. So I ask people a lot of times, like when coming up with goals, what's something you've really wanted to do for a while but you've just never gotten to, right? So I was like, I always wanted to learn how to play the guitar, or I really wanted to join a martial arts class, or I wanted to, so on and so forth. Like, all right, well, that's something you want to do. So why don't we use this as an opportunity to challenge you to do that, right? It gives you that push you needed to take that first step. And I think that's why a lot of times people will get stuff out of this program and come thank me later, because, you know, it was just that push that they needed to go ahead and do it, whether maybe it didn't directly have anything to do with drinking. But again, like I said, if you're more happy and satisfied in all these life areas, you're less likely to act out in some of these other ways. So I do think it all kind of pertains when it comes down to it. So practicing new habits, gain a new perspective on your behavior, be accountable to make changes, using technology for accountability, right? And we'll show you how to do that with like file sharing and having having your goals tracked and everything like that. Doing harm reduction. So these are all reasons why we're doing this program. Gaining confidence in your ability to challenge yourself. Right, and here are just some more examples of different educations that you could do, and you could pause this and take a look at some of them, some different challenges and different goals. So again, this is going to be as prescribed differently by each counselor depending on your situation, but generally it's going to look like something like this. So as we move forward, what we're going to have you do in the program, we talked about that accountability, but also education, assignments, goals, that kind of thing. And using technology, what we're going to do is we're going to have a shared folder together. It's probably the easiest way to do it. There's other ways around it, but so we'll have a folder, and where it says generic, it would say your name, and it would look something like this. So you would have a folder for your assignments, a folder for your evidence, the final assignment guide, and the graduation sheet. So the graduation sheet basically is like what this is going to look like moving forward, right? So for education, you're going to decide, like you and I, if we meet this next time, we're going to decide, okay, well, what's going to be that further education? Do you have to do 1 or 2, depending on what was prescribed? Is that, is it going to be the dangers of drinking? Is it going to be like all those things we talked about before? So we'll write that down, a challenge, and then the goals. So you'll have that all here so that you could remember what it is, and then week by week, in order to get credit for the week, this is kind of like an online class, you'll have to provide evidence that you did each of your goals, right? So for example, this person's physical goal, go to the gym 3 to 4 days a week, and then, it's in order to know we do that, we would have evidence, right? And one of the ways of doing that is this individual would take a selfie at the gym, or you could do a workout log, right? There's ways of fooling us in this, but, again, I want these to be things that you do, right? The things that you want to do. And if you, let's say, okay, I want to work out 3 to 4 days a week, right? You set that goal. We're going to help set them together, right? I don't want them to be too hard. I don't want them to be too easy. So say it's 3 to 4 days a week. That seems easy. Let's say you do 2. All right, are we going to not give you credit? Probably not going to make it that bad. But we'll say, okay, well, maybe do we have to adjust it down a little bit, or what do we have to do to get you to get to that goal, right? If you just completely blow it off, then yeah, maybe we have to push it another week or whatever. But so far, no one has, honestly. Everyone's done pretty well, and they've provided evidence. So, I'm going to read the spiritual book, and I'm going to write a paragraph summary about each one, right? So that's what you'll do week to week, and every time we meet, or you meet with your counselor weekly or every other week or whatever that is, you'll have that, we'll check it off as we look, and then, you'll provide evidence in the evidence folder. So let's say you have, you're doing it for 6 weeks. Each week you have 4 goals, and they'd probably be labeled, and then you could go in the Dropbox and put that goal, whether it's a write-up, a sheet of paper, whatever that is, a picture. Camera phones are great. Right, so week by week, you'll go ahead and do that. And if it's confusing at first, it's okay. It'll make sense. Your counselor will help you out with that. So that'll be the program. And then there's a final assignment. And that's just right here. It's like 1 to 2 pages, single space. So looking back, how did I get the DWI or whatever the incident was? It's just the most common. How did that happen? How could I have avoided it? What did I learn via the education? What did I learn via the goals and counseling sessions, if that's what you ended up doing too? What stood out to me in the education? What did I learn? And how do I apply that knowledge, right? So this is good too if you have a lawyer or you're going back to court to have that write-up of here's what happened. It's kind of like a before, during, after. Here's what happened, here's what I'm doing about it, and here's what it's going to look like in the future. Here's my plan. So kind of going in with the plan. So there you go.